Aiello.
Here.
Trustee Bolfus.
Here.
Trustee Taglia.
Here.
Trustee Case. Trustee Bullwinkle.
Here.
President Cullerton.
Here. And Trustee Case had called me over the weekend. He had a friend pass away. He is at a wake tonight in Plainfield. And he is hoping to make it back in time for the meeting, but he may not. So you may see him come join us shortly. All right, with that, will we please all stand for the pledge? Scott Shepard, could you lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll remain standing. Trustee Taglia, could you please lead us in a prayer?
Certainly. Our Heavenly Father, will thou be pleased to grant that this meeting, thus begun in order, be conducted in peace and closed in harmony. Amen.
Amen. With that, we will go to item 3, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
Mr. President?
Oh. Yes, Mr. Attorney Benninger.
All the matters on tonight's agenda I've worked on except for item 9. Kathy Orr will be at the meeting next time, so I would ask that item number 9 be tabled until she returns next week.
9 or 8?
Oh, it depends. On my agenda, it was 9. It's 8.
Oops.
On your agenda.
For the strike the pavement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We have
The attorney would like to remove item 8. Can I have a motion for the agenda as without item 8?
Mr. President,
Trustee Taglia.
I'll move to approve the agenda minus item number 8.
I have a second.
Mr. President.
Trustee Davis.
I will take second.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Trustee Aiello.
Why can we vote on this tonight? I mean, I understand Kathy's not here. I don't think we need Kathy here. We've seen the agreement.
It's at the discretion of the board, but she couldn't make it here tonight, so this is her item. She's the one that did it.
Understood.
Yeah, okay. It's up to the board.
Essentially, so if any questions want to be asked,
You can ask.
the attorney who wrote it probably would be best to answer it as opposed to the attorney who didn't.
Okay. Understood.
All right. Any other questions or comments on approval of the agenda? Roll call, please.
Trustee Aiello.
No.
Trustee Bolfus.
No.
Trustee Taglia.
Yes.
Trustee Bullwinkle.
Yes.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
President Cullerton.
Yes. Item 4, Village President's Report. I only have one thing to report. Hopefully everybody saw the fabulous homecoming celebration that Willowbrook High School put on. Not only did they tear up Morton, but they actually had a wicked fireworks show after the end of the game, which was absolutely incredible and maybe something for the board to think about come next July 4th. Just saying. All right, with that, we will go to public comments on agenda items. If there is anyone who would like to speak on an agenda item, now would be the time. If you want to speak on a non-agenda item, that would be item 14. Is there anyone who would like to speak on an agenda item? If you'd state your name for the record, please.
Hi, Cliff Duple, 60 East Oak Street, Villa Park. I would like to talk about the number 7 on creating an ordinance. I understand by making this a special meeting workshop that you are able to pass ordinances. But for something like this, it's an ordinance that affects businesses, it affects residences. And to have no time for a resident or business owner to come in and talk about this, I believe is wrong. You know, if it comes down to where you need something broke and you need to replace it, a first and final, of course, but not on something that's going to change a business and a resident that owns business, a pet shop, or anyone else. So I think you need to give residents and business owners time to look at the ordinance of what you are proposing, because it doesn't state anything on the agenda. You have to FOIA it and to be able to receive it, and that takes time too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duple. Anyone else to speak on an agenda item? Come on up, Tom.
Hi, my name is Tom Raleigh. I live at 411 South Yale, Villa Park, and I've lived there since 1969, 43 years. It's item 6 on that second reading. My first comment on that, I wasn't sure you could approve a second reading on a workshop. I gotta find out about that. It's not an official meeting, so I don't know how you can approve second reading. But the other thing is, I love what Trustee Aiello said on the 10th in the meeting. That was perfect. That hit so good. It was, I don't know, was it 8 years ago or something that the board wanted to put a 4-story building up on the Prairie Path Park in Princeton. They got it approved and everything. They got it approved, and we fought it in court, and we won. The village lost because they were saying highest and best use to put up a higher story. And I think this falls in the same category. Highest and best use doesn't mean a higher building. It just doesn't, and that can be proven in the courts. It's out of place. Trustee Aiello said it very appropriately on the 10th in here that here you're dealing with the high rise. You didn't talk about nobody talked in the developer. I don't know where the developer talked about anything on high rise or high luxury condos, but now they're talking, this is luxury rentals. That's a BS word. Luxury rentals. If they don't get them rented, and there are a lot of them, they'll go to the government, get Section 8. The government will pay 70%. The people in there will pay 30%. You're not going to have luxury rentals unless you talk about what the government is also subsidizing it for. That's just dead wrong. And I don't know why. We beat the board going to higher than it should be, higher than the best use, 8 years ago or whatever it was. And maybe we could beat them again in that. And first thing is, can you do this in a workshop meeting? I don't even know. You can pass a second. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll certainly find out about it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else like to speak?
Jennifer Burns, 311 South Illinois. Just recently moved there. I was at 22 North Charles Avenue for the last 14 years, and then also on North Ardmore here since, I don't know, from 75 to 97. Grew up there. I'm against, for 6, the 10-story apartment complex. When I found out that it was passing on to a second reading, I kept asking, friends and neighbors, what do you think about this? And I didn't find anybody that thought it was a good idea, would consider having a sibling or a child move into that area. I think that our crime-free housing hasn't really had enough time to find out if it's even effective. As someone who regularly goes through that area, I used to walk to Jefferson Middle School. We've gone through rougher times than we're at now. I know some people might not believe that, but, I wasn't allowed to kind of cut through on Terrace there, but sorry, Mom. I did so anyway. And then, here I'm looking at this Tribune article. This was Chicago Homes, September 14th, finding the right apartment for you. And to go on Trulia.com, /voices, and city-data.com/forum. I can't say that when you go on these sites that this 10-story luxury apartment complex would somehow trump out an Ovaltine rental. And I have some concerns that if people are looking for a place to rent here in Villa Park, that Ovaltine, and I guess if you can't find some place there, then maybe, I still don't think this would even be a second. I talked to a woman on Sunday. She lived in those apartments right behind the 7-Eleven, and she finally moved out just recently. Asked her parents to come back home because for her and her young son, she would call the police department because people would be, sitting on top of her car or creating a nuisance. And the police would just kind of like, I don't know what we can do about it. And she would talk to her landlord, please help me. I want to have a safe place for my child to play, for me to come home at night. this is just across the street, and I'm starting to wonder if this is just getting rammed down the residents' throats because we're talking about a piece of property that's north of the tracks, and I don't think that's fair to the people who live over there. And I really don't know if this is in our village's best interest when housing is still not doing well, and we still don't know if that crime-free housing is really going to have the impact that we hope that it will have. So I'm hoping that we could slow this project down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
I'm Rick Ullman with 415 North Ardmore. I'm also the developer of the project. There was a question asked tonight that I'll answer again regarding Section 8 housing or giving something back to the government that one of the other speakers gave. And I would just like to reiterate the fact that while we are not asking the village for any type of partnership economically in the project, we remain unaware of the vehicle in which the government comes in and supports our project and rents them out. And again, the idea of renting luxury level finishes, which remain the same, is something that not only is sustainable for many generations yet to come, but it also gives us just options, which is what we're talking about. So there is absolutely no plan for Section 8 or government-assisted housing, and to our knowledge, there is absolutely no vehicle that we are aware of as private developers at market rate in which the scenario that the prior speaker mentioned, that the government comes in and takes our building over, and we just don't have any idea how that could possibly be. I don't believe that to be an accurate statement in any fashion whatsoever. So hopefully I've accurately answered that question, that this is absolutely something that is market rate and will remain market rate one way or another, and potentially ownership in the future. Apartments is just one option of many that we've talked about here at the board.
Thank you. Well, actually, Ken, come on up to the podium, and if you could ask the question, if Rick...
After the board, do you own any other properties here in Villa Park? Manage? No. Okay, do you know the vacancy
Ken,
rate at this time?
Can you address us, and then
absolutely.
he'll do
Does
that?
he know the vacancy rate at this time? Does he know the overcrowding problems, the crime problems? I don't think so.
I imagine he does, because he owns not only the 2 strip malls, but also the 4 buildings behind, so he has those rented out as well.
Okay.
So he is in the same boat you are, as trying to, I guess, change the dynamic.
Yeah, well, he's imminently familiar. I mean, I know even the board's told him
right.
if you can read between the lines, several times not to do it.
Well, it's not a matter of not to do it. I mean, is it just the sake of building something? To have, several $1 million spent on another structure that's 10 stories high, which would be the highest point in Villa Park. We have 3 stories all around the neighborhood. That was the highest. And then, of course, we had Ovaltine when that was taken over by Lincoln Properties, which originally was supposed to be a health care system for seniors. And then that got scrubbed because he had a thing with his wife and the property, da-da-da-da-da. And then it got made into /townhomes, rentals. 22% vacant. You go down any street in Villa Park, see any apartment complex, there's vacancies all over. But yet, my problem is, I have a building next to me that are all 1-bedrooms that are overcrowded. And I know they can't afford a luxury apartment. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So, I mean, are we just building for the sake of having something there? You had a viable business, Tyler's Towing there, that got knocked down. There's been no construction on the site. It was knocked down. There was no construction on the site. Therefore, asking the board to negate the condominium part of this to be switched over to apartments, that's only if there's been construction, and there hasn't been. Okay? So are we, we have an ordinance of overcrowding that I see in my eyes has not been enforced. But yet we're going to turn a blind eye to this side because somebody's going to build something. We had that on the North Avenue Tavern. The pizza parlor went in. Over by North Avenue also, we had the individual. We were going to build over there. All of a sudden, he turned up bust. It can't be built. What assurances do we have? That's all I'm saying. We've had TIFs given to Oakfield Ford. What happened to them after 4 years? Boom, gone. We took it into shorts. Now someone else is in there, great. We list all our new businesses in Villa Park on our spring and fall issue that's given to every owner. Do you have one that says the businesses that have failed within that 12 years? Because it's a high rate. You might come here, you may start a business, but it doesn't seem to stick after a certain amount of time. It's not the board's problem, it's not the board's fault. Perhaps Romney or Obama can take this up, but the immediate thing is, if we're going to build a 10-story building, is there 2 levels of parking, 3 levels of parking? I mean, it's going to be the tallest spot in Villa Park, privately owned, right against the railroad track. In Lombard, if you go down St. Charles Road, the S-curve, go on down there. They just started phase 2 after 8 units that were in that unit went into foreclosure. Okay? So are we building just for the sake of building? Doesn't make sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.
You know my number.
John Squeal, North Lincoln Avenue, Villa Park. On this item 7 that this gentleman Cliff commented on, first I want to thank the board for bringing that to my attention. I had no idea that was going on. Tom explained everything that was going on at the Swap Mart last week, and I agree that a first and final doesn't give people time to really talk to anybody about it if they had any concerns. If it maybe give them a little more time.
Well, when we get to it, if one of the board members wants to take it to just a first, they can easily recommend that as well.
Things were going on, but I just found out about it last week. And as far as the other issue with the development, I think it's good that you're listening to everybody, giving them the time. Obviously, people have a lot of concerns, so that's all. Thank you.
My name is Carol Miller. I live at 113 North Ardmore. I've lived in the village since 1974. We've raised 4 children here. 3 of my 4 children have bought homes in Villa Park, and 2 of them have actually sold their starter homes and bought other, bigger homes in Villa Park. That says a lot for the village. I have friends that their children have bought homes in the area, but I do have concerns about going with a 10-rise apartment. It was one thing when it was a condo. I still, don't like 10 stories. That's way too high, too big. I know I did print out your on your website, what you had stated originally. It still says condos in there. I know your first phase was supposed to be designed to provide lower cost modern housing. Is that your first phase on your apartments? So that's my one question. You talk about retail space on the bottom levels. Do we have any assurances? Have you talked to any businesses that really do want to have their businesses run there? I did see somewhere something was said about a Subway. We have a Subway right here, a Dunkin' Donuts. We have that right here. It's 2 blocks away from the train, granted. With a community like that, people would probably go to that when it's closer. But my other issue is we have a problem with that side of town. We have so many apartments already there. And now to put a 10-rise apartment building there, I don't see it. And I know we want to try to aim for the commuter, that works downtown, get off, they're right there. I just don't see it happening. I mean, the apartments that are over on the north side are already having problems. I live on North Ardmore. I see the police go by all the time. They're at 300 North Ardmore, 400 North Ardmore. Things are going on. I don't see where the village, what are you doing to try to combat that before we go ahead and then give that we're going to put another 10-story apartments there. And I know a couple of years ago, my daughter had sort of brought it up about the crime-free, trying to get the landlords. I know when we went for home rule, that was the big push. Al, I believe you were one of them, that wanted to go after the landlords to help, sort of have more control over the tenants, the people, having them sign something before they even come in, background checks. Looking into, if there is a problem in the apartment, that if the police were there, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, it was like if they were brought, the police were called 2 to 3 times, the landlord could evict them, that the tenants had to sign a form. And I'm just wondering, is that something that you're looking to do? Is that...
They got $1,400 a month.
Can.
Right. And my other thing is, I believe what the gentleman was saying is, it's not that the government's going to come over and take over your building. That's not the issue. The issue is that when the bottom line comes, like everybody else, if you can't rent those apartments because you're not getting the people you want, eventually you're not going to sit there and just let them go empty. You are going to turn around and then have the subsidized housing. Because you need, it's like everyone. We need, your bottom line is you're investing to make money. So I suppose that's where my concern is, that, condos are one thing, apartments, no, we just don't need more of that, especially on that end of town. We have too many already, and we're not solving the issues there. So, thank you.
Okay, I think I wrote down everyone's questions, and I'll answer them briefly in the order that they came in. Your first question had to do with lower cost apartments. That is not our intention at all. Our intention is to be at the absolute high end of the market starting. So we would believe we are bringing a product online that is going to be better than Ovaltine in every regard. So as we said, our monthly rents are averaging starting in the $1,100 to $1,200 a month as a starting point, going up from there depending on the view and where they are. So, and I'm answering your questions even though I'm not looking at you, just for don't want to be rude, but since you're sitting back there. So the intention is to have absolutely no type of lower cost. Again, we intend to be at market or above or set the market. Retail assurances, I'd love to have some. I'd love to have assurance in life. One of the interesting things I've gone through with this process and hearing how incredibly negative some of the residents can be at times, that I'd like to get on board with you to know who's got assurances. Because if you have them in life and in the future, I'd like to know. No, we don't. What we do have is a good plan and a good vision and are excellent executors and the best chance we have to get that. So we have a plan for the retail. It's quality space. It's good. And we have not marketed it yet because we don't know what the project's ultimately going to be. I mean, that's why we're continuing to have these discussions here. Gentleman made a comment about 22% vacancy at Ovaltine. That is not accurate. Vacancy is closer to 3% in the aggregate and often lower than that in the main building, just as a point of clarification. And someone asked me if I was familiar with the crime and the condition of the area. Yes, I am. I think everybody in this room is, and I think the people voting tonight are. I'm also familiar with a great quote and a definition that Albert Einstein gave about insanity. He said insanity was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to have a different outcome. And after 5 years of working with this community and hearing people talk about the future and looking in the rearview mirror and knowing what they did, the one thing we know is it didn't work. The one thing we know is that what we do have is a lot of crime. What we do have is an underdeveloped area. What we do have is a missed opportunity. And what we also have confirmed that the definition of insanity is in fact correct. We keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we get the same result. We don't get a different result. So what I present tonight, and where I bring this thing to answer your question, is what residents are we looking for? There's an important part. What we present tonight is bringing new people to Villa Park. So while we look around the room in this community, the decision for one and all looking forward is, are we an open community? Do we want new people? We've heard about what people have done. We've heard about what it was like. We've heard about the ability to get your car fixed here and all those other things. And that is all going to be part of the fabric. But the question is, are we willing to have new residents? So yeah, there's a lot of vacancies. And I hope there's more vacancies in those buildings. I hope they get torn down. I hope they go blank. I hope that, because the people that are in their buildings are not coming to my buildings. I'm not coming, our project isn't here to poach the people that are on Division Street right now. This project is to bring in the DuPage County residents that are graduated college and want to live near their parents and don't have an option right now. This project is to bring in people that work in Oak Brook, that moved here from Houston and like the area. We keep forgetting that this project is completely about new residents and a new vision. And I support everyone's efforts here that want to see the city respect the safety of the residences and work with us. I've proposed to this board and this community for years now, the best way to do that is to try to bring a lot of new crime-free residences into the marketplace. Let's get the tide turning in our favor. So I don't want, the crime issue of being crime-free and these new residences that are coming in aren't moving from one building currently here to another. We're going to bring new people into Villa Park, and those people shop, and they eat, and they ride the train, and they go to the French market, and they enjoy all the wonderful amenities, which I still believe are in this town, even though I might be, after all the pleadings I've heard to not believe in Villa Park, to try to keep it the way it is. I guess I'd like to say it takes people with vision to say, I hope at the ribbon cutting, everybody that is concerned, we will prove wrong. And that they will see what a wonderful community this makes and what an addition it is to its downtown. So our security program will be the highest secure level of secured building in DuPage County, okay? Not just in Villa Park. So your question about what are we doing with our security program, we have a secured enclosed garage, gated. We have 3 levels of different security to get into the building, with key card and different access points to get you in. We have the highest level of video surveillance and security that's happening overall in the building. As I've said, our commitment to safety and providing our residents is the same, that share everyone's concern, will be higher than anybody else's with these new people that come in. But let's give them a chance to like Villa Park and give them a chance to realize all the good things, which would be nice to hear tonight. One of the good things, this is a good community. That's why we're here. We care about it, and we want to try to improve it. I think I answered everyone's questions.
Thank you, Rick.
You can hold me to it. I will tour you through it anytime you want.
Mike Orlowski with Villa Park. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've lived in Villa Park since 1969. I walked down Vermont every day when I went to school, right past all of the apartment buildings that haven't changed since 1970. No new development since 1970. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. We had meetings back in 2009. We had 3 of them. And the length that he has went to build this project. And I can understand that in the beginning he wanted to do condos. Right now there ain't anyone that would even give you a mortgage for a condo. But that ain't to say later on in the project that he says, hey, you know what? We're going to convert them all from apartments to condos. But it's a new development in Villa Park. It's a change. It brings new people here. It gives them somewhere to live. I wouldn't want to go and rent anything on Division Street. So we need places for people to rent that are decent to live. I commend him on his efforts of even wanting to continue this project. I just wish a lot of the people that are here tonight, I commend you for coming, but possibly, 2009 is when all this started, when we did all the presentations for the project, all the details, the drawings, the layouts. And honestly, there was I want to say it was almost 6 other businesses or landowners within that area that offered to sell their property to him too, that had the apartment complexes that haven't been changed since 1970 or maybe longer. So I commend them. I like the project. We had to stay at meetings until midnight. Very good project. That's all I got to say.
So you gonna
Thank
move
you,
in?
Mike.
Huh? You gonna move in the building? No, I own a home right over here. Why would I want an apartment? Exactly. I started out in an apartment.
All right, no banter.
Scott Shepard, 235 North Michigan. I live right down Division from the new development. I applaud you for taking the risk of building something in this economy with all the people saying it's not worse yet and it's not hit the bottom, which is a big risk. I understand it was going to be luxury condos and and I welcomed it. Now that it's being luxury apartments, I still welcome it. I grew up in Chicago. I've seen a lot of the neighborhoods I grew up in, used to hang out in, now they've torn down a lot of them buildings and put 3 flats up. They're condos, $1 million condos, and that's a third the size of my house. And I seen it bring up the property values. And all the other apartments around in that area got a higher class of tenant. He's going at $1,200 at the low end. When all that comes up, all the other apartments around it, you'll get a better class of people coming in there that are willing to pay. The Section 8s will eventually, wind up moving out because the other apartments will demand higher rent along with it. It does nothing but bring up the property values. Plus, they'll bring up the houses too. And they are going to be built to be converted to condos, right? Within code of between a condo and an apartment. So I'm looking forward to it just bringing up the neighborhood. 10 stories? I don't know about 10 stories, but hey, it is what it is. It's right next to the train. If I lived, a block down, I'd be glad they're putting up a 10-story barrier so I wouldn't be able to hear the trains. Tell you the truth. But back in 07, late 07 and 08, a friend of mine, another guy, and I were looking at buying up a lot of buildings on Division west of Addison Road and tearing them down and building condos. My friend who does this for a living and has a lot of apartment buildings and a lot of rental condos said something's happening. Things are going too good. They haven't sold the ones down on Gray Street yet. He goes, let's take a step back and wait. I think the bottom's going to fall out of this. And in less than a year it did. People lost their houses, You can't buy a condo now. And the people, a lot of people lost their houses. A lot of people became unemployed. And they screwed up their credit. Can they buy a condo now? Yeah, they're back working. But it's going to take time for them to get that, get that credit back. That's why houses aren't selling and things aren't rebounding. People don't have the credit that they used to. So I can understand him wanting to make them into condos. He's holding on to a lot of money and property that he needs to get going. So I applaud you for taking this risk in this environment.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else wish to speak on an agenda item?
Jennifer Burns. Is there an assurance that he will have the same tenacity and vision that the property owner at Parliament Square undertook themselves prior to us passing this crime-free ordinance to really turn around that area? Because over by Brandywine and Parliament Square, people avoided that like the plague. And and the other thing too is just because someone needs Section 8 to help them find some affordable housing. That does not mean that they are crime-laden at all, okay? But we do know that sometimes when people are having a difficult time to make ends meet, and if they're having a hard time kind of doing what we would ask people to do, there's sometimes that Section 8 label that comes with it. So I guess I would just want to make sure that no matter if he remains being this property owner or if it passes along to somebody else, I'm hoping that we have some assurance as a village to say that this is what we hold near and dear, and no matter what happens, we want to make sure that you always uphold the high standards that you discussed this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
I applaud her in coming up with the one assurance I can actually give and answer. Earlier tonight I said there weren't any, but there is one. My tenacity. I'm stunned and pleased that I was actually asked. The one assurance I can give is my tenacity and perseverance. And if I haven't demonstrated that over the last 5 years, putting up and dealing with the amount of negativity that's been thrown at me by non-stakeholders, I don't know how else I can. This is what we do for a living. We're as vested as anybody. We're passionate about it. And we're vested. We're putting a lot of money into it. I don't know how much more assured or vested I could possibly be other than to say that, that we've stood here for many years. We've come here remaining in very good faith, you know what I mean, in communicating in this partnership we've had, or friendship with the city, rather, to say this is where we're going and how we want to do it. We've worked collectively together. I think we've all can say we've reached a consensus. There's not ever 100% one way or another. And so, yes, I give my assurances that my tenacity and my perseverance will remain, as well as our financial commitment. We're going to fight as hard as we can to deliver on every goal that we've ever set out for. We always have, and we always will.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Yee, the Economic Director, and I wanted to also make a comment. When I came on board to the village, I didn't know Mr. Goldman, and so I checked references, I checked his partners, and I wouldn't stand up here and support this development if I didn't truly believe in my heart of hearts that Mr. Goldman is a highly reputable developer. In addition to that, I've checked out his other developments and have found them all to be of high standard, high quality, and he is, most importantly, which is what's really important for Villa Park, he is a highly responsible real estate developer with a very strong background in real estate construction. So this is not a slap-up type of apartment. This is condo quality with all those strong finishes, and I too applaud him for his perseverance, his patience, and I think he's going to really build a wonderful development that will be the catalyst for a change at that TOD station. Thank you.
Any other comments on agenda items?
Yeah, Mike Orlowski again. I actually did think of something that maybe we could change with number 6, is actually kind of reverse it with number 7 and do a final reading. And that way, since we've been working on this project since 2009, get it finished, take a vote, and that way we'll decide whether we're wasting any more of his time.
Second reading is a final reading.
Okay.
There's been no new construction on the site since the permit.
Any other comments for public comments on agenda items? Seeing none, we will go to item 6, second reading of ordinance amending ordinance 3571 that granted a special use for PUD at 401 to 415 Ardmore Avenue and 406 to 416 North Beverly Avenue, Villa Park, Illinois. Golden Spike LLC petitioner. Can I have a motion for the second reading?
Mr. President.
Trustee Taglia.
I'll move for the second and final reading.
Can I have a second, please?
Mr. President,
Trustee Bullwinkle.
I second the motion.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah,
Who wants to go first? Trustee Taglia?
I just want to tell the residents, I've talked to a lot of people in the area. I live in that neighborhood. I have 3 small children. 2 of them, I go to grade school at North School. I've spent time at the train station at night. I've been accosted by gangs of thugs. That neighborhood is horrible. And how are we going to change it if we leave it the way it is? I teach at the university and I talk to my students. This is exactly the kind of building they want to move into. They don't want to own cars. They want to take the train downtown, go to work, see their friends, go to the ball game, get on the train and come home. These kids are graduating from Northwestern. They get good jobs. They can afford these apartments. I think those are the people we need in our neighborhoods. If we never do anything, nothing in this life is guaranteed. But I'll guarantee you this, if you don't do anything over there, nothing's going to change. I don't want my kids, everyone here is saying, thank God my kids are grown up. Well, my kids aren't grown up. And they go to school in that neighborhood. I get attacked by mobs of gangsters in that neighborhood. How are we going to change it if we leave it the way it is? And again, I'd like to thank Mr. Goldman. He's been attacked so many times by people who don't have the right information. There aren't enough Section 8 vouchers to fill 10 apartments in his building. There's only a certain number of vouchers for each community. Villa Park only gets 100. I think they're probably all issued. So there is no Section 8 available for that building. If he can't rent it, he's taking the risk. He's going to lose the money. $50 million this man's putting on the line. So if people want to take a risk, Mr. Goldman's doing that. And I thank him because it's the only way we're going to change that neighborhood. It's like they did in the city, 1 block at a time. They tore down the projects. They're building $1 million townhouses. I just found out south of Roosevelt and Racine now is a neighborhood called University Park. $500,000 townhouses. There used to be shootouts there 10 years ago. We're on the verge of having shootouts right here, right now. If we don't do anything, that's what we're going to have. I don't want my kids growing up, and I don't thank God that a lot of people's kids are grown up and gone. I want my kids to grow up and be able to live their lives in this town. In the condition that is right now, no one should have to live like that. Nobody. So that's why I support this. I thank you, Mr. Goldman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Taglia. Trustee Davis?
Well, actually, Ms. Taglia, thank you for answering my Section 8 question. So that's pretty much basically out of the question. Secondly, Mr. Goldman, I agree with you. I would love it if West Division disappeared. Thank God he made a ghost town and disappeared. It's been nothing but an eyesore. It cost these residents tons of tax dollars. Not all of it, but the far west end of it. I do have concern with the height of the building myself, but with change comes change. If we only have buildings like what's on West Division, we're only going to attract those type of renters. We as a village should demand better rental buildings so that we can clean up the rental areas and have safe and clean rental projects. When this project is successful, the landlords around the area should be able to rebuild and have a better class of residents and increase their monthly cash flows. I truly believe in the project. The height's still scary, don't get me wrong, but the project itself, and I brought this up every time we talked about it, Cabrini Green. I was there the first day they changed the first building. Change comes change. And this town's afraid of change. They want change, but they're afraid of change. Here's a change that could change that whole area of town. And when you're done there, North Avenue Townhomes is your next project. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Davis.
Mr. President.
Trustee Ayala.
I won't go into my dissertation like I did last time, but you've got 3 problems with the ordinance. First problem is we have a zoning ordinance 21.5E6 of our zoning ordinance that states that if no construction is begun within 1 year from the date of approval of a final plan development, the final development plan shall no longer be in effect. This was approved in September of 2009. There's been no construction on the site, so we can't amend it because it doesn't exist anymore. The second problem with it is we have a section 21.5 sub E sub 8 of our zoning ordinance. That expressly tells us what our minor changes are that can be made by amendment to an existing ordinance. The minor changes listed One of the minor changes that is not identified, a minor change is not identified as changing from condos to apartments. It expressly states what the minor changes are in our ordinance. This is not considered a minor change under our definition of minor change. The third problem we have with it is the existing plan provided that open spaces would be conveyed, subject to declaration of covenants. The declaration of covenants, or declaration of condominium that would have covenants, would not be necessarily provided until later, and that staff would handle that, or planning and zoning would handle that. As far as the terminology that required terms of that declaration of condominium, how it would handle treatment of maintaining and taking care of the common areas and open spaces. Section 8 of the actual ordinance, 3571 is our ordinance. Section 8 of that ordinance is our findings of fact. In those findings of fact, it expressly states that the open spaces will be conveyed to the association. When you take it from apartments, or when you take it from condominiums to apartments, which we were told wouldn't have any effect on the ordinance, other than to change it from condominium to apartments. We were told that there would be no other effect on any other part of the ordinance. That's not true, because that condominium declaration isn't needed when you do apartments. That declaration doesn't exist. Planning and zoning is never going to see the declaration of condominium. What happens when we get to a point where the development's done, and you've got open spaces that now need to be conveyed to an association? There's no association to convey them to. Is that our mistake? And the developer just conveys it to the village to take care of? That's what it looks like what would happen. And if the board is okay with that, then fine. I personally am not okay with that unless it's gone through planning and zoning. So I think you got three problems. One is this plan that you're amending doesn't exist anymore under our own ordinance. Two, that the plan that we're trying to amend if you can even get past that, it doesn't exist because you think there's some construction that was done, which I haven't. I mean, there's no building permit issued as far as I know. Is there? Is anybody from planning or building department know if there's a building permit that's issued on that site at all? So if there's no building permit issued, there must not have been any work done. So it can't have. It doesn't exist anymore because the plan doesn't exist. If you can get past that and you say, well, there's some construction the village has done in relation to the site, and that's the construction that's referred to in the ordinance, I don't think you're right. But if you want to try to get around that way, you can't get around the minor change problem. The minor change is not a minor change. We were told that it was a minor change, that our ordinance expressly states it is a minor change. There was an argument with a gentleman from planning and zoning who argued it wasn't a minor change, and he was told to, in no uncertain terms, he was wrong. There's no way that gentleman was wrong. Specifically in our zoning ordinance, it tells us what a minor change is, and this definition does not include as a minor change, changing from condominiums to apartments. And lastly, if you can get past those two problems, you still have two more problems. One is that our plan unit development ordinance, section 21.5 sub E sub 5, 21.5 sub E sub 5, states you have to have any open spaces or common areas conveyed to that association or to some entity that's a homeowners association or condominium association. If you did townhome unit owners association, we're not going to have that here. And then the last thing, of course, is that in our own ordinance that we're trying to amend, we're not doing something. We're not going to end up with covenants that are supposed to go to the planning and zoning for their review. So I understand my vision isn't necessarily accepted by everybody on the board, and that's fine. I've already spoke my piece about that. I won't go into it again. But you got those three problems. Four problems, really. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I have one question for Trustee Ello. What open spaces are you referring to?
You know what? I didn't actually pull the plan. There were open spaces referenced in the ordinance.
Well, maybe you can help me. What would be a definition of an open space?
I'm not sure. I believe open spaces would be, I think to the extent it identified a area, I think. I didn't go look to make sure I was right. There was an area on the southwest corner of the development that was supposed to be open space according to the plan that's approved.
That's actually our open space.
No, that's not the park. There's a different open space to the north of the park. At least according to what the plan says, unless the plan is on our land, which I'm understanding it's not on our land.
Attorney.
I can maybe clear up a couple items. I mean, I did write the ordinance. Number one, you're right. Your PUD ordinance does provide that construction is supposed to be given for 1 year. What it also states, though, is that the village board can extend that for various periods of time up to 4 years. And that's the date that I've got in the ordinance. So by approving this tonight, what you will be doing is extending that period of time for compliance with that requirement until the date that's in the ordinance.
Except for the 21.5 sub E sub 8 says that a minor change is not one. Minor changes are those that do not change the concept or intent.
Right, that's
of the
issue two.
development.
So I was talking about
Okay.
issue one. Issue one, I think you can provide for the continuation of that PUD through approval by the village board up to that limit that's provided for in the ordinance, and that's the date that I've got in the ordinance. Now, number two, the issue of the minor versus major PUDs. I've never seen an ordinance that has everything listed in it, and sometimes you're going to have to read a little bit between the lines. There are some things that planners and developers do that fall within what is considered minor amendments to the PUD, and some that are major, and usually they do have a list like that, and it's been Kathy and I's opinion that this falls within a minor category. In addition, I think the argument that Kathy made when she was here, and I'll make the same argument, is that issues of ownership really aren't an appropriate condition of a zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinances deal with land and the use of that land, not with the ownership of that land. Some municipalities do provide with an agreement with the developer that they can have covenants that the developer would agree to that would go on the property, which would maybe restrict rental property. But as far as that being in an ordinance, I think you've got a real concern about whether or not that's an appropriate zoning restriction, because it doesn't really deal with the use of the property, and it really doesn't. It really deals with the ownership of the property. So that would be my comment to number two. Number three, as far as the common area, without the association, the common area is going to have to be maintained according to the village's ordinance by the owner. The owner is going to have some common areas, and just like any other apartment, those common areas are going to have to be maintained by the owner according to the codes. And if he wants the quality of tenant that he's going to have to maintain them to that same high standard. I mean, he's not going to have litter and debris floating around his common areas. He's going to have to maintain them to a proper standard that his tenants are going to want. So again, that's really not really relevant here, because we don't have the condominium association, which was going to take ownership of the common area. The common area is still going to be held by the developer. The developer is going to own it. He's going to have to maintain it and maintain it in a proper manner.
Actually, our ordinance goes on to say that if it's not maintained, that we will take care of it. That the village board, the village will take care of it.
Well, that
even the ordinance goes on to say that.
Yeah, the original ordinance. Again, I don't like those kind of ordinances because it makes an obligation to the village. Why would the village want to take on the obligation to maintain common area of an apartment complex when really it's the responsibility of the owners? That's really a property maintenance ordinances. You know, if he doesn't do his job, we'll cite him for not maintaining his ordinances properly. So he has to at least meet those standards, and it sounds like the development is going to be even a higher level, so he should have even a higher standard. He better have the kind of amenities that he's going to have to attract those kind of tenants. There's no reason why the village would ever want to take common area unless there was some benefit for the village. And even then, if you're talking about condominium associations, usually what you try to provide is some kind of, sometimes do backup SSAs or something. They don't want taxpayers to pay for those common improvements for someone else. So really, either the condo owners would pay for those common improvements, or in this case, the owner's going to have to pay for those common improvements to keep them maintained.
Okay. Our ordinance 3571, the one we're amending, doesn't say he has to take care of it. He says that it says it will be conveyed to a owners association. Period. It doesn't say the owner of the project will take care of, or the owner of the developed property will take care of this open space. It says it will be conveyed to the association.
I agree, and it
It
makes
does-
sense.
It's not even unclear, it's not vague, it's very specific, and it comes right at the end of the finding that it will be conveyed. I mean, if that's not another change to the ordinance that's affected by this change, I don't know how you can tell me that that's not a change.
It
That's
is
not
a change.
a significant change, especially when ownership shouldn't even be in the ordinance, is what you're telling me, and now ownership is now not a minor change, or not a major change. You know, I checked too to make sure that what I was reading, since I don't do municipal law, was what I'm telling you. I don't see where, you know, I couldn't find a case that said, well, when is it minor and when is it major? So I'm stuck with my ordinance. So my ordinance tells me this is my definition. If I want to go back and amend the ordinance to add this as one of the things in my definitions, fine, I can live with that, and I appreciate that that is something the board can do. I think you're better off because this is a major change to go from an ordinance that approved a condominium development that this board had a very difficult time getting approved as a condominium development, to now not give notice to those owners over there, especially within 250 feet of this property, and tell them, hey, by the way, we're not going to do it as a condominium development. We're going to do it as an apartment building complex. That's a completely different use, other than the fact that it's residential, than what they had anticipated. It is a completely different use. In my humble opinion, it's a significantly different use. And in our ordinance, it's a major change. It's not a minor change. At the very least, we need to give notice to those other owners over there that came here, sat in meetings, and thought that this was a condominium, who may not even be aware that this is going on right now, because there's never been another notice over there telling them that, hey, this is going to be changed to apartments.
That's not true.
And we
There was
sent
a
out
notice
notices.
posted on the.
We sent out notices.
You sent out notices.
Yes.
And did we post it on the site?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make a couple clarifications in addition to what our village attorney has stated. Again, I will reiterate that planning and zoning does not deal with ownership issues, whether it's condominium or apartments, and that is not something that they do when they are reviewing projects.
Your existing ordinance 3571 does. It states in there.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
Whether it's
but-
supposed to or not, usually,
Right.
I don't know.
So that's why
It just happens
that's
to
why
do it.
it's. Let me just finish.
Sure.
And so that is why it is viewed both by our attorneys and by our department that is considered a minor change. Then secondly, you had a question that wasn't addressed by our attorney, and that regards the open space. So the village, in the ordinance specifically, it states that the village acquired the parcel containing the auto shop, and that creates the open space to the site. So that's part of the open space. Then there's another type of open space that is related to the project, and that's the common areas specific to the development. And so that open space is maintained by Mr. Goldman. So that's what they're talking about.
So are we talking about the same thing? I understand the park and the village, what the
That-
village
they're
bought.
talking-
We're not talking about that. I'm not talking about that space at all.
No, neither is she.
I'm talking about the open space that's on the site
Right.
of the development.
Right. So mine, yeah.
And what you're saying there is that the owner, under our
That's-
ordinance, the owner's going to take care of it, according to what our ordinance says? Even though the ordinance says that it's going to be conveyed to an
Again.
association?
Again, because if there's no longer an association, then it goes to the single ownership under Mr. Goldman, and he's responsible. He becomes the entity that's responsible for it. The CC&R's declaration is only because you had separate ownerships for each condominium unit. And if you don't have 250 separate ownerships for those condominiums, you no longer have the need for a condominium association. Now, Mr. Goldman will be responsible for maintaining the common areas of
If we amend the ordinance.
Correct.
If we don't amend the ordinance to state what you just said, I don't mean amend the ordinance to go from condos to apartments. You need to amend the ordinance more.
It does
You
say
need
that.
further amendment that says that.
We'll ask the attorney that one real
Yeah,
quick.
it is in the revised amendment does state to take that out. the declaration.
Well, I think the ordinance doesn't need to address that, because once you remove the ownership issue, that really is kind of a moot question as to who's going to maintain the common area. The common area is going to be, it's really not common area.
It doesn't
It's just-
say that. The ordinance
It's just
says,
ordinance.
The ordinance says if it doesn't get conveyed to a common area, common association or owners association, then it'll get conveyed to the village.
Well, and that makes sense if you're going to have a condominium association. It's really moot if you don't have an association. At this point, your other ordinances would prevail and say that the owner has to maintain the property.
I disagree. I think if I'm the developer of the property and I need to maintain open space that's pretty useless to me to some extent, it's a burden, I would rather just convey it to the village. And since the ordinance as it's written states that it will be conveyed to the village if there's no conveyance to an association, then I'm going to convey it to the village.
The village would never accept it. I mean, it would be.
It has to. The
ridiculous.
ordinance states it has to. The
Only
ordinance
if
tells him
it's-
he has to convey it to me.
Only if there would be a denial by the condominium board, but there is no condominium board. I mean, there's not going to be any condominium.
Right, there's no condominium. I understand.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the point of the
So
amendment.
I mean, I think if you want an amendment, we could do it. It doesn't make any difference, so I think it accomplishes the same thing now by saying we're not going to have the condominium association. The association's not going to own the common area.
Okay, so an agreement is what you're telling me is, then an agreement that tells me as a developer that I need to convey open space to an association, and if I don't, I must convey it to the village. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is I'm going to keep it myself because I want to take care of this open space.
Right, there's no association, so it's...
And it's my opinion that if I'm a developer, I might want to convey that to the village, which will add a burden to the village that wasn't anticipated in the original ordinance. Although I think we're kind of missing the point at this point, because you don't have any construction on this site at all. And your ordinance states, our ordinance, 21.5E8 states, or 21.5E6 states that you got to come back to the planning and zoning when there hasn't been any construction on the site. The original ordinance doesn't say it's good for 4 years. The amended ordinance is going to say that, but the original ordinance doesn't say it's good for 4 years.
It wouldn't be in the ordinance, it's in the code book. The code book says, your original ordinance, PUD ordinance, says you can extend it by the board's action for additional periods of time.
With them coming back to the planning and zoning.
No, it just says the board has to do it. It doesn't say it has to go back to planning and zoning.
No, you feel free to show me that section.
Yeah, it is. It's if no construction is begun within 1 year from the date of approval of the final development plan, which it hasn't.
Right.
The final development plan shall no longer be in effect. In its discretion and for good cause, the
So
village
period
board-
up to that point, right?
Right.
In its discretion now?
In its discretion and for good cause, the village board may from time to time extend the period for beginning construction, which is what we're talking about. Said extension shall not exceed 4 additional years.
Right, so to extend beginning construction, we're not extending construction, we're amending the ordinance. We're not asked to change the time to construct what was approved. We're being asked to change what was approved. That's completely different.
We're doing two different things. I think we're getting rid of the ownership issue and we're extending it 4 years. There's two things that are being done by the ordinance.
We're changing an ownership issue. We're amending it to go from condos to apartments.
Yes.
And is that what you're saying is an ownership issue?
Yes.
Okay. And your opinion is that that's a minor change?
I'm saying that's a change that the village board can make, correct?
Because it's a minor change?
Yes.
Okay. Humbly disagree. That's one thing. The failure of the construction to start, that's not what we're amending today, is it?
Yes.
We're allowing the amendment in order to allow him to construct what was, okay, I follow you. So you're going to do two things today. You're going to amend the time for him to construct, and you're going to amend what he can construct.
Right.
To the extent it is changed from condos to apartments.
Section 5 changes the date. So the final date would be September 28th, 2013. And then if you go back to section 2 or 3, whatever it is, it deletes that requirement out of the prior ordinance deletes paragraph 7 from the prior ordinance 3571 of section 4.
Well, we have a lot of disagreement, you and I, but I've said my piece. The rest of the board heard me. You guys do what you want. I think you're violating this section of multiple sections of our own zoning ordinances.
Thank you, Trustee Ayala. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. President?
Trustee Bullwinkle?
Yeah, I want to switch gears just for a second. And I want to go back to the crime-free ordinance that we have on the books. And I was saving this for the board reports and recommendations, looking for an update. But Manager Keener, now might be a good time for you, and I see Deputy Chief Budig here, maybe to talk a little bit about where we're at with the program. I understand we've gained some traction with it. There's been some successes to show that it is working slowly but surely, since it's only been on the books now for a few months. If we could speak to some of the accomplishments, or where we're at kind of at this point.
Yes, be happy to. Since the program's been initiated, we've had some recent successes on Division Street, and we've got a number of cases that are right now before Chief Pavlicek for his review. We have over 100 cases where the CSOs and code enforcement have worked together, resolving certain issues. And so I consider it successful. And we're moving forward with the non-home rule version. I mean, I've heard talk of the home rule version versus the non-home rule version. And I'll just take a quote from Mr. Shepard this evening. It is what it is. So we work with what we have, and we've been very successful. Like I said, over 100 cases where the CSOs and code enforcement have worked together. And to me, that's very successful. And we're looking forward to moving together, obviously, in this area along with others. So.
Yes, and there's been some successes with cleaning up some properties
Absolutely.
in town that have been problems for years. And we've had this on the books now for, 3-4 months, since June maybe? And so, it is gaining traction, and that's going to be a big part of all of our accountability with this particular project and any other projects that we take on moving forward. The board has a responsibility, the residents have a responsibility, staff has a responsibility. We all are in it together, so we all need to make sure we keep check on what we're doing. So for right now, it sounds like the crime-free program is really starting to gain steam, so just wanted to put that out there.
Your Honor, I'd like to add one item. Now, when I said we had recent success here, we actually had our first eviction. And those folks obviously don't live within Villa Park anymore. They live in a neighboring community, and that's what the crime-free program's for. So they were evicted, they're gone. They're not in Villa Park anymore.
They've been evicted?
That's correct.
Perhaps the first of many to come. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
My pleasure, Your Honor.
All right. Real quick, I do have a question of Chief Budig. Can you give us just a quick background of Parliament Square and what the owner of Parliament Square did when he instituted crime-free on his own without the village mandating, and what Parliament Square was 6 years ago, 8 years ago, and what it is today?
Yeah, I can't
Because I think Mrs. Burns brought up a very good point. Parliament Square instituted crime-free on their own, for those who don't know, and if you talk to any officer around town, they'll tell you that Parliament Square was 10 years ago was absolute garbage. And it was a horrible place to be, and now it is actually, he's kicked out people, he's evicted people. I'm sorry, you know what, if I was going to say it all myself, I wouldn't have called you up, but go right ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. A number of years ago, when crime-free became a hot topic in Schaumburg, Illinois, we dispatched some of our officers to be trained under the full crime-free program, knowing very well at that time we were unable to enforce some of the same things because we had an inability to license in the Villa Park. But those officers met with the owner of Parliament Square and began to show him some of the various things that he can do to better his property. His property was in a dilapidated state, It was a place that there was great frequency with police visits, especially on Fridays and Saturday nights. He began to, in those buildings, it was not uncommon to find the front doors smashed in, the windows smashed out, urine in the hallways, beer bottles, and other forms of garbage strewn throughout the property. He began to institute some of the same ideas that were brought up through Crime Free. He instituted a crime-free lease program on his own, and that changed the complete makeup of Parliament Square. He also then once he began to get better tenants, he invested additional funds into his property. People became more appreciative of the type of property it was. They began to take care of the property, and it has evolved into the piece of property that it is today. I cannot cite specific numbers for you, but I can say to you that the number of police responses to that property has drastically been reduced as a result of him increasing the value of the property, instituting a crime-free lease addendum, and also putting proper locks on the doors, replacing the windows.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask you 2 more things. It'll be quick, very fast.
All right, go ahead, Trustee.
Village Attorney, I'd like to know is there a way that we can allow Mr. Goldman to raise, if we can convince him that 10 stories is bad, but we still want to give him the density he needs. So to allow him to go to 5 or 6 stories on the other parts of the project that are only 2 and 3 stories now. I don't really have a problem with his density, I have a problem with the height. Is there a way to do that either tonight or another time that would allow him to have the same density, but adjusting the project plans as they currently exist?
Right. Well, that clearly would be a major change. If he went out and started his project, if he went out and started his project and found that he wanted to make some adjustments, which were major changes, he would have to go back to the zoning board.
Is the height listed as one of the?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Height is specifically listed, as is density.
All right. I don't want to change the density. I'm fine with his density.
Yeah, but I mean, it would really be the developer. What you're doing is you're giving the developer and really his expertise.
Lots of options.
Yeah, the options.
Understood.
This ordinance doesn't re-adopt anything. This is only changing 2 little specific things. 1, the ownership issue, that it's not going to be condos, and 2, extending the time frame. But no, if he decided that he wanted to reduce one building or make one a little higher, or he acquired more property. If he acquired more property, he may spread his density. Those would be major changes. Those would come back, public hearing, and then come back to the board after.
Yeah, I'd love to talk that guy into that. Other item I had as a question was, assuming this gets passed, right now there's multiple parcel numbers. Is there a way to require that the parcel numbers in legal be consolidated into one taxable parcel number?
That should have been considered a couple of years ago. There is a way to do that. It doesn't affect the taxes. Sometimes it makes it easier. He'll receive multiple tax bills now.
Right.
Eventually, he could come back with a plat of consolidation and consolidate that down to one parcel. Actually, it would have happened if it was a condo, of course, as you're aware. The common area would have been one tax bill, and all the little units would have been another tax number. But for right now, it's acceptable. He just gets multiple bills. Usually what will happen is, I think the assessor looks at the whole site and then just kind of allocates to those tax
And my concern there with that question is, the way it's approved now, because there's multiple parcels, some of the buildings are on some parcels and other buildings are on other parcels. So theoretically, I can build and then I can sell off the 3 flats or 2 flats on the east side, and I'll end up with multiple owners in the project.
I think that'd be very difficult, first of all, because it's a PUD. The PUD requirement covers the entire parcel, zoning parcel, as they usually call it. So to sell it off, he would have to meet the requirements for a lot. And that would include setbacks and all those density requirements for a lot. And he'll never be able to do that because the PUD gave him this flexibility to make those adjustments over these different lot lines.
Okay, but if you did sell to a third party, what's it call it, the 3-story building on the east side? Is it Mr. Goldman, is it a 3-story building on the east side of the project?
Along Beverly?
The town, yeah, along Beverly, yes.
certain phase, I mean, it's steps, it kind of
I
weighs
understand.
things up, but I mean, we are consolidating a lot. It's just the next step, Chris, it's gotta happen. So to answer, I mean,
But you couldn't sell it because that building
Why
does
not?
not meet the requirements of a building on a
Let's-
lot.
Let's say that parcel 001
Right.
is, and 002 are the Beverly lots.
Okay.
And as it's built out, those are sitting on 001 and 002. What stops me from conveying that to a third party, subject to the declaration?
That'd be subdivision. He'd have to come back before planning and zoning, wouldn't he? To
Well,
be able to do that.
I don't know.
I understand what you're thinking, but I don't know that that's what, they're going to see the declaration in the title.
Yeah, if there are two lots, and there's a single building on those two lots, which then becomes a zoning lot, and if that building meets all the zoning requirements, yes, you could sell it. But I'm saying because it's a PUD, I don't see Amy back there, but because it's a PUD, what happens is it kind of gets spread over all these different lots, and it's going to be very difficult to have a building conform to the zoning ordinance on that lot.
It won't conform to the zoning ordinance. That's why we had to do the PUD. And that's
Right.
fine, I don't have
And
a
then
problem
it's
with that.
legal non-conforming, and, you know.
That's
you
what
would
I'm
have
worried
to-
about, is that at some point you convey those 001, 002 out,
Yeah.
it becomes legal non-conforming.
Right. But you have to be sure that it still complies with the PUD ordinance, because that PUD ordinance continues forever.
Right.
That gets recorded against the property. So if it says there's going to be a three-story building on these two lots, it's going to be a three-story building on those two lots. Again, I hate to use the word, but
Understood.
it becomes an
The
ownership.
development will still happen the same way.
Yeah.
The ownership, I understand.
But yeah, can he sell it? Sure, he can sell it.
And in phases, so to speak.
As long as everything still meets the PUD. The board approved the plan. There's a plan out there that says this is the way it's going to be built. And, you know, to try to subdivide it as long as you have a building on a lot. The problem is most of these buildings may go over a different lot.
I'm sure most of them do. I was just
problem.
thinking in my head, if I sell off tower on the northwest corner from the smaller tower on the southwest corner, I could also theoretically sell off east side. I'm ending up here with 3 and 4 owners on a PUD that wasn't originally thought of.
Theoretically, you could do that, but you probably are going to have a re-subdivision to be sure that you got lot lines that match the parcel of property that you're selling with the
Well,
building.
I'm thinking it's already built. It's fully developed, done, and now I'm sectioning off these pieces. I could do that, and it's legal non-conforming.
If they don't cross.
As long as there's a lot and the building and you don't have lot line issues, or you have to make it subdivided, yes, you can sell those off. You still have to meet the PUD. It doesn't defeat the PUD.
Right. So I just want to make sure the board understands that. I understand the perception is it's going to be one development, but I want to make sure the board understands. I actually don't have a problem with that. If he can sell it off, I mean, that's more development money that potentially goes that way. I want him to make money here. I think it's a great project to do in Villa Park. I prefer not the 10 stories, but whatever. If he can sell it off and get money on the east side half, that's going to help him to finance something. So I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure the rest of the board does understand that.
It's theoretically possible. There may be some legal issues regarding the lots and the PUD, but yeah, it could be done.
And then the last thing I want to make sure I beg Mr. Goldman to do, in spite of the fact that I'm sure he's not happy with me these days, is I understand that south elevation. The south elevation is the site, is what the commuters are going to go by. And right now, the way it's planned, that south elevation is going to look at a parking garage, for the most part. They're going to see our park, assuming we do the park, and it's going to see the west half of the property. They're going to like that, but they're also going to see this huge parking garage that's 3 stories high, to some extent anyway.
Well, they're also going to see the back end of the building with the decks coming off. They're
Absolutely,
also, and remember, the parking garage is covered.
Right, and unfortunately, you're going to see the 3 stories. I couldn't get them to.
So you're not going to see the parking. You won't see the parking because that'll be covered.
That's also the public art wall for the community.
And that's what we're doing with it. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I do remember that in the.
Yeah, that's also the public art wall for the community. I think it's going to be a hallmark for all the commuters when they see the one section that does cover the garage has always been earmarked for public art for Villa Park.
So you'll have different levels. You'll see, actually, from the train side, you won't just see a front face. You'll see the different levels of the entire project.
Right.
You'll see the one in the back and then the different rises throughout as you go by on the trail.
Yeah, I mean, it looks beautiful. I mean,
Anything about it.
not here to denigrate Mr. Goldman. I
Mr.
think he has an
President?
excellent company that does an excellent job.
Mr. President,
Trustee Bolfus.
in deference to Trustee Allo, these questions were answered at the P&Z meeting 9 years ago. But the height.
4 years ago.
Is it 4?
9 years ago?
It seems like 9 years by now.
2007.
Yeah.
2007.
The time for these questions was at the Planning and Zoning Commission. These questions were asked at the Planning and Zoning meeting, and with the height, with the south wall, and this were all taken care of at that time. That's where these questions should have been asked. I'm sorry, but you're 5 years
too late.
Too late.
Appreciate that.
Come in at
we
the
both
11th
know
hour.
that it wouldn't have gone as apartments in 2009.
Yeah, right.
Any other questions from the board? All right, roll call on the second reading.
Trustee Bolfus?
Yes.
Trustee Taglia?
Yes.
Trustee Bullwinkle?
Yes.
Trustee Davis?
Yes.
Trustee Ayello?
No.
President Cullerton?
Yes. Item 7, first and final reading. Or no. First and final reading, an ordinance of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, establishing licensing and sanitation requirements for the pet shops and kennels. Well, let me just make it a first.
Can I make a motion? Make it
Hold on.
first.
Can I, Mr. President, just make it a first?
It was published as first and final, so I think we should amend it because that's the way it was published.
Okay.
So if they want to just do it as a first, I'll need a motion to amend it to just a first reading.
I would have to agree with one of our residents who spoke on it. If I could have a motion to amend this to just a first reading of this ordinance,
Mr. President?
for that motion, could I have an amendment so this is a first reading?
Mr. President?
Trustee Bolfus?
So moved.
Can I have a second for the
President?
first reading? Trustee
I'll
Taglia?
second the motion.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. President?
Trustee Taglia?
Just for the public's edification, this brings the village in compliance with state law that regulates the humane treatment of animals. Unfortunately, some people abuse animals and let them live in very unsanitary conditions. I think it's deplorable. I would favor this as a first and final. It only brings us into compliance with the state law. But in deference to our residents, who we listen to and we work for, I'll be happy to support this as a first reading.
Thank you, Trustee Taglia. Any other questions or comments? Real quick, is there any way we could put the proposed ordinance up online so people can see what they're looking at? We've had 2 residents actually say they'd like to see what it was prior to, because it could affect certain people. Could we at least put that up over the course of the next week so that people see what it is? All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis? Yes. Trustee Ayello?
Yes.
Trustee Bolfus?
Yes.
Trustee Taglia?
Yes.
Trustee Bullwinkle?
Yes.
President Cullerton?
Yes. Item 9, discussion workshop regarding 2012 pavement marking program. Public Works Director Vitas Giskalis.
Thank you. As you know, the village is responsible.
Oh, wait.
Nope.
Stop. That vote we took was just to amend for a first reading. We actually we've approved it being only a first reading, so now we have to approve the first reading. So, do I have to get another motion? I need a motion to approve the first reading.
Mr. President, so
Trustee
moved.
Bolfus, second.
Mr. President.
Trustee Taglia. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Taglia?
Yes.
Trustee Bullwinkle?
Yes.
Trustee Davis?
Yes.
Trustee Ayello?
Yes.
Trustee Bolfus?
Yes.
President Cullerton?
Yes. All right, item 9. Come on, Vitas.
Sure this time?
Yes.
As you know, the village is responsible for maintenance of all the regulatory signage, traffic signals, and pavement markings within our jurisdiction.
That's all the local roads. We recently let a contract for pavement markings. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and the in-house efforts that will also be going on to supplement that. Pavement markings are governed by the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or we call it the MUTCD. Now, the MUTCD pretty much sets the standards for where these markings have to go and how are they to be used. So just to give you a little bit of history before we go on to the specifics, longitudinal lines, which are basically either yellow or white. You have the double yellow that goes down the center of the street or it marks the left end of the pavement. You have the white that either marks lanes or the right end of the pavement. A double line basically means it's more serious if you cross it. A single line means it's less serious if you cross it. If it's dashed, that means it's okay to cross it. So that's the basics of the longitudinal lines. Transverse lines are basically stop lines and crosswalks. Those are meant to be placed, and I can read you the guidance. Let's go back to center lines first of all. The guidance on that is they're required on urban arterials and collectors primarily. Anywhere where you have 20 or more feet in width and an average daily of traffic of more than 6,000 vehicles per day. Now, coincidentally, those are also the streets that qualify for federal funding. So whenever we get a project where we get federal funding through a grant, we automatically include the pavement markings as part of the project, but then they're ours to maintain after that. So 2003 was the last time we had a contract for pavement markings. But for instance, North Ardmore, we had projects in 2004 and 2008. We recently did the bridge. Pavement marking was included in those contracts. North Villa in 1998, we had a federally funded projects that included the pavement markings. South Villa more recently, south half was done in 2006. North half between St. Charles and Madison was just done in 2011. So those always include the pavement markings. Over time, they have to fade and they have to be replaced, and that's why we let the contracts. Talking about stop lines and crosswalks, the guidance for stop lines is they should be used to indicate the point behind which vehicles are required to stop in compliance with a traffic control signal. They're also allowed at stop signs, but they're not required. Crosswalks, the same thing. They're generally to be used at intersections. If you want to use one at a mid-block, which is like a mid-block pedestrian crossing or a park crossing, you're supposed to have an engineering study. So there are guidelines for putting the signs up, and that's why you don't see them everywhere. One thing I found interesting in the MUTC, I can read you. Crosswalk lines should not be used indiscriminately. An engineering study should be performed before a marked crosswalk is installed at a location away from a traffic control signal or an approach controlled by a stop. So if you're not putting them by a stop sign, you know, basically they're saying there better be a good reason to put them up there for safety reasons. Now, for our contract, we're going to be putting up 8 bicycle crossings, restriping basically, 61 school zones, 34 pedestrian crossing, and 127 stop bars. The product we're going to be using is called Stay Mark, so it's not actually paint. It's actually a marking that's put down. And I'm going to let Rich Salerno come up and tell you a little bit about the specifics of how that's done.
Good evening. As Vitas mentioned, the village led a contract just recently for our pavement marking program, our 2012 pavement marking program. We read bids publicly on Wednesday, August 22nd. There were 4 contractors that placed bids. The lowest qualified contractor was Superior Road out of Melrose Park. The board did approve their contract for $57,395. Subsequently, after that, we had a pre-construction meeting and a notice of award on September 13th. After that meeting, they were scheduled to start work next Monday, the 7th, with their markings. The material what's being used is thermoplastic. It's currently what was placed on South Villa from Madison to St. Charles Road. There's a number of different pavement markings out there in the industry. As Vitas mentioned, primarily when we're using our federally funded projects, we've put down a tape. And that's actually when we've specified it's inlaid. It's a higher quality product, lasts longer. Thermoplastic is a very good product. The reflectivity is extremely well, much more durable than paint. So those are some of the different products that are out there. Also, what's placed in the thermoplastic as it's going down, it's actually a very warm product. It's over 300 degrees as it's placed onto the pavement. There's glass beads that are dispersed into it. That's what provides the reflectivity of it. Included at your desk this evening was a little bit of a map, what actually is going to be done, part of the contract. Basically Ardmore from Roosevelt Road all the way up to the UP tracks, and then on Villa Avenue from Madison to Roosevelt, and then from St. Charles to North Avenue. Throughout the village, besides that, there's a number of school crossings that are going to be upgraded, as well as the trail crossings, both of the Illinois Prairie Path and the Great Western Trail. The one downside of thermoplastic is that it cannot be placed on concrete streets. So with that in mind, the two schools at the north end of the village, North School and Jefferson Middle School, there's some pavement markings on there, but what the village has done, since the bids were very favorable, we were able to purchase a new striping machine that actually could put paint down. A few benefits of that. Also, glass beads could go into the paint. This particular type of paint striper will use a high build paint, which is a thicker paint. So we're required by law to use latex. Before we were able to use oil-based paints, but due to environmental concerns, we do use water-soluble paints. So with that, obviously the paint doesn't last nearly as long as thermoplastic or tape, but the nice feature is that with a striper, we could send a crew out, touch up areas as if they get damaged with plow damage over the winter, following spring, crosswalks, school zones, touch those areas up. And the good news, as I always said earlier, is with the favorable bids that we did receive and what was budgeted, we were able to purchase this machine under that same budget item and still be well under budget.
Rich, how easy is it to change the markings with this, what is it? Was it
Thermoplastic?
Thermoplastic that you're putting down? Say on Ardmore, there wanted to be a bike lane from, say, the Metro station to the Prairie Path.
Actually, the thermoplastic's easier to remove than tape. And in part of the contract here as well, it's what we call removal, pavement markings. There's cutting heads that are out there, like either a walk-behind machine or actually a truck-mounted machine, that have the ability to remove that. Obviously, they cut into the surface a little bit, but it's not difficult to remove it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. President?
Trustee Bullwinkle?
Thank you for the map. Looks like this. Can we put this on the website so the residents can take a look at this?
Yes.
All right. That'd be good. Thank you.
Also included in the packet was the actual striping machine, the one that we purchased.
Yep.
And this is starting Monday, correct?
Yes. This is starting Monday. Obviously, weather dependent. We can't put down pavement markings if the ground's wet, but temperature shouldn't be a problem. It's 50 degrees. We just need 50 degrees to place the pavement markings down.
Any other questions from the board? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Vitas. Item 10, discussion workshop, Lufkin Pool, Superintendent Marlon Hummel.
Okay, the best is for last. All right. I'd like to thank board members, manager, director, Parks and Recreation, Greg Golov's around, for coming out in the rain. I gave a quick tour.
of what the pool, not many people get to see what our world is like in the filter rooms or when the pool is empty, you're working in the bottom of the pool. But you came out today, I was able to show you where the failed fabric or the liner is around the walls. It's not only in the deep end, I can show you it through the sides. And last week I was up and I gave you option 1, option 2, option 3, basically ranging from 25,000 up to almost 60. Well, we keep researching, we keep looking. Dave Elliott, who is our specialist lead worker, and I were out there. We came up with another method. Option 4, it's not here. We believe we can get a year or two out of this, spending anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000 in general working funds. Get this repaired. We don't feel the sides are going to just slide down. What we're worried about is the bottom coming up. Liners float when water gets behind them. So what we want to do is anchor the bottom. I talked to the company. They do similar stuff, but they charge a lot of money to come out and do it. We can do all this in-house. Hold that bottom down, refill the pool for the winter, inspect it in spring, refill it. The only thing we'd be out if we have to empty the pool in spring is 240,000 gallons of water, but that's a chance we'll take. It's a lot cheaper than going 60,000. So I'm basically recommending instead of spending 60,000 to get 1 to 2 years, we spend 1,500 or 2,000. That's a little easier to work with. And we'll give our residents another swimming season, and it'll give us time to move forward in our long-range plan for both swimming facilities for the village of Villa Park. We'll be able to work with other residents for the next year or two. Kind of a win-win scenario for a change, we hope.
Thanks, Marla. Any questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Trustee Bullwinkle?
since we're coming way, way under what we thought we were going to spend, what else can we get done within reason, reasonable amount of money and time and staff resources? What else can we do?
I would look at keeping it up, running, do some aesthetic work. But we have a drop slide that needs to be repaired, could be between $3,000 and $5,000. That little yellow one has a lot of rusted areas. I think I would caution about spending too much money on something for 1 to 2 years, but yet make it safe and enjoyable for our swimmers.
It would be something for the long term, of course, something that needs to be done, but
long term
could be.
If we're doing long term,
well, just anything that we can fix now that will have some lifespan.
At Lufkin, nothing.
Okay.
I've been truthful with the public. It's 58 years old. The building might be able to be rehabbed. I don't know till architectural firm comes in. But the shell in the filter room, it's 58 years old. It's beyond its lifespan.
Marla, would it be worth it to look at some of these funds and look at possibly bringing in a pool, I guess, consultant or engineering firm to start taking a look and work with our Parks and Rec Commission, work with the board on different plans for the long-term future of both of our pools in Villa Park?
I'd have to ask the manager. I don't know that I do. The manager can probably give the director of Parks and Recreation approval for interviewing architectural firms, at least to come up with a budget price of what it's going to cost for that planning series, then to come up with ideas for the community and rendering so they can see what they're looking at and not just talking back and forth.
So the manager would probably need direction from us to then pass on to you, to pass on them out.
Need a little help here, Mr. Manager.
That would seem to me.
We're getting 2 years.
It doesn't cost anything to interview architectural firms to get prices.
Right.
And then at least we would have numbers to bring, the director of Parks and Recreation would have numbers to bring to the manager and then to the board.
It seems to me that would be a smart move to make. Chris?
So there's two things. I think what we're thinking, I think
I'm ready for it.
Is you save the 60 grand, spend it on some engineering to get a plan, right? That's the idea. So I'll skip that because I think that was pretty obvious, but I wanted to say it for some reason. And then when I realized it was obvious, I felt like I shouldn't say it. But since I started,
That's right. You're doing well talking tonight, Chris.
Yeah. The second thing is, you thought about, or did anybody think about the water pressure from behind is what's killing us? To some extent, the water pressure from underneath. Anybody think about putting any drain tile in underneath where we put a sump system in?
You'd have to
Would
tear
that
it-
help at all?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Jefferson has it, and it works well.
Okay. They did.
This never did have it, so the drain is just to the bottom of the pool.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions? I'd like to at least get some architectural engineers and some companies in here to take a look at it and at least, and I don't necessarily know if they have to do full proposals, but at least give us an idea of what it would cost to look at proposals from them and who has the most experience, what they've done in other communities, where they're at now, and how they've benefited and helped an entire town. That would be great.
Nice thing about proposals is they're free. We could ask them to do from A to Z or A to B.
And let's get a bunch and ask them to do A to Z.
Got that?
Anyone else disagree?
No, we have 2 years to figure out what we're going to do in 2 years.
That's about it. That would be our best guess.
All right. Thank you, Marlon.
Thank you.
All right. Item 11, Village Clerk's Report.
No report today, thank you.
Village Manager's Report.
Yeah, I'm going to pass this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Boltis.
No report.
Trustee Taglia.
Just a couple things I'd like to mention, Your Honor. Okay, this past Wednesday, we had the SALT meeting, which is the seniors and law enforcement together. It was at the Community Recreation Building. It was a really interesting presentation given by Robert Dulski from the State Comptroller's Office, Judy Bartopinka. And what it was about was identity theft and fraud and how seniors are the biggest target of this these days. So it was a very informative discussion that we had with Mr. Dulski. So I'd like to thank him for coming out from the Comptroller's Office. And the police official on hand for the presentation was Sergeant Tyson Johnson, and I'd just like to say that he did a remarkable job explaining to the seniors how to handle suspicious door-to-door solicitors. And the answer there is keep your door locked, call 911. People in Villa Park need a solicitor's license to sell anything. So if they don't have that, if they won't show it to you, just call the police. They're more than happy to come out and check them out. Okay, so just please keep that in mind, because these scams, I didn't realize how prevalent they are. And these guys are always walking and knocking. So just for our seniors and everybody, call 911. Also, I'd like to thank the residents of the 1100 block of South Julia. They had a block party, and they invited me and my family, my wife and kids. We came. There's a couple other trustees who were there, so I'd like to thank them for being there. We had a lot of fun because the fire chief sent over the fire trucks and the ambulance for the kids to see. So that was a lot of fun. So I think I'd like to definitely thank Chief Rakosnik, Lieutenant Olmsted, and firefighters Frank Reposh and Officer Phillip for their time showing the kids the fire truck and the ambulance. So thank you, everybody. That was a lot of fun, and that's the extent of my report.
Thank you. Trustee Davis.
The block party in Julia was a blast. I apologize. I did not get the red phone they requested, but it was a good time. The firefighters that came out, the candidate, poor guy. Being the bottom guy, you really get the hard jobs. But yeah, it was a great time. But other than that, the only other thing I'd like to say is item 8. We've stalled this thing out, I think 3 times now. Can we just next meeting finish this, please? We look silly here. It keeps coming up, we turn it down. So that's all I'd say.
A lot of bad guys.
Thank you. Trustee Bullwinkle.
Yeah, just a couple things. Manager Keener, can you give us a quick update on where we're at with the skate park? Hopefully we're still planning on breaking ground this year. We've got some grants and some other in-kind donations that we need to get moving on, so otherwise we'll lose it. So
Actually, that's a great question. And,
check in on what's going on.
I'll turn it over to Director Golan
Thank
to
you.
elaborate.
I talked to Vasily from Public Works. They've submitted their stormwater detention calculations to an outside firm, V3 Design, I believe, correct? And that was last week. So they're waiting for approval from V3 for the detention area. and after that, we're ready to go. We just have to do the permit process and the bid process.
So we were talking
get the
about
bid specs.
October-ish, so is it, seems a little
it's going to be
ambitious,
Yeah,
but-
we're shooting for October. so
okay, all right. Well,
end of October, hopefully.
break ground so we don't lose all that great funding and
Right.
in-kind donations. Okay, great. And that's all that I had for the skate park. But the other thing goes back to the pavement marking. I'm going to just do it here because I don't know how else to reach out to the resident who contacted me, sent me a letter, didn't sign their name, but they did have some questions and concerns about the pavement marking. If this did not answer your questions, if you happen to be watching tonight, please give me a call. I have no other way to get in touch with you, but I'm hoping that whatever your questions and concerns were in regards to the pavement marking, we addressed tonight. So you can call me at my office, 630-834-5032. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Trustee Ayala?
Just need to know what the progress is on Van Buren rebuilding of the street from Ardmore to the east. As we had a group of people here that we met with, Venus, and it's just. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The progress is what we intend to do is to complete as much of the design as possible this year, and to look for funding in the spring for that area. And possibly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vetus, but we're going to take some soil borings possibly.
That's the first thing.
Yeah, and analyze what we've taken and move from there.
So that when they call me, do we have an idea of when the borings will be done? I understand that can vary depending on the weather and such, so. But I just want to make sure I don't forget about it, because they're not going to forget about it. I was told repeatedly.
Before winter.
That's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Public comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Joe, I know you had one. Thank you for waiting.
Good evening. I'm Joel Morey, 309 East Maple Street. I've been a resident since 1989. I'm a member of the DuPage Rail Safety Council. The DuPage Rail Safety Council was founded on April 30th, 1994, as an outgrowth of a railroad safety conference called by the chairman of the DuPage County Board. Its volunteer officials and members are made up of railroad officers and officials, government officials, educators, private citizens, and others who have deep concern for safety at railroad crossings. This year, the DRSC is holding its biannual conference on October 11th, 2012, at the Hyatt Lodge at the McDonald campus in Oak Brook. The focus for this year's conference is prevent tragedy on the tracks. Safety is good business. Every time a train and vehicle or pedestrian collide, there is a tremendous emotional and financial burden placed upon those immediately involved. In addition, the domino or ripple effect increases the cost to society as a whole exponentially. Each year, thousands of lives are impacted and millions of dollars of expense is needlessly incurred. I wholeheartedly believe in the work that this group does, and this year they are offering a buy one, get one free discount for first responders. To encourage participation in the conference, I'm offering the village the $50 conference fee to be paid out of my own pocket, so that we can get at least 2 of our first responders to this conference. However, the village is considered in the conference sponsors' culture of collaboration. The village, its officials, its employees, and its citizens are all considered to be partners in our safety. We ask that you join us and the 6 panels of experts who will illustrate why safety is good business. This event is also open to the public, and the registration fee and information, which is due by October 1st, can be found on the drsc.org website. As a part of this, I would like to now present the village with the invitation. Check for the conference fee.
Thank you,
The
Joe.
additional conference invitation to be viewed by any interested parties.
Thank you, Joe. We'll make sure we get copies to all the board. Appreciate it. Just for everybody to know, Joe has been extremely helpful. When I first got on the board, my predecessor, Joyce DePizia, was very active, and John Davis were both very active in DuPage rail safety. Those meetings tend to be every Saturday mornings. Joe works for the railroad. He's a friend of mine, and I asked him, I said, Joe, you love the railroad, you work for it. Can you start helping me out by figuring out and bringing back to me all the good stuff they're doing? And Joe's been a very huge benefit to me, keeping up to date on all the DuPage rail safety. So thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Scott?
Scott Shepard. I came here a few weeks ago and basically complained about the way we patch our streets. I'd like to thank John and Vitas and everybody else. I've seen a lot of progress in the way we've been patching our streets. I see they've done Addison Road. They fixed the problem on our 2-year-old street, I think it is. They've also done some patching, and they're doing work down on Division. Just want to say I've been seeing a lot of progress this last year, and you know, I've been here since 2000, and I haven't seen a lot of progress. I didn't have a lot of faith in the town, and I guess I'm getting a renewed faith in the town. And this thing that came up about the 10-story building going up by the TOD, the north side of Villa Park, you know, over the last few years I regretted buying the house there, you know, it's the north side, you know. But just like to say to the residents, to risk putting up a building in that neighborhood with the type of tenants that are currently there is a big risk. You're putting millions of dollars in this building, and you worry about getting it out. Everybody complains about North Avenue being the dead area. With the element that's up that on that side of town, and you know how run down it is, who wants to be the first? You want to get a Walmart in there, they're going to be like, no, my shoplifting is going to go through the ceiling. You know, the hard thing is getting the first couple guys in there to do something, to change. Once that change starts flowing, everything, you know, booms. You see it, you know, in all different areas. So this building, though maybe some people don't like 10 stories, at least it's not in between two single-family homes. It doesn't look that out of place. I could deal with it by the train tracks. Actually, if you put 10-story buildings all up and down divisions so I don't have to hear the trains go by, I'd encourage that. But I just like to, you know, point out, you know, the north side's got to come up, and it takes investment to do it. I'll take what I can get. The TOD is a stepping stone in the right direction. Anything else on North Avenue, you know, finding that first big box that'll come in, especially in this economy, that wants to invest that type of money and take that risk is hard to do. So just like to see more progress on the north side, and thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else to speak on non-agenda items?
Yes. My name is John Lupo. I'm at 30 East Van Buren in Villa Park. I'm here to speak about the reconstruction of Van Buren Street. I want to thank Trustee Aiello for actually bringing it up. I wrote it down because I know I'm going to forget exactly what I'm going to say, but I've lived there for 27 years. This is not my strong point, just so you guys know. I lived there for 27 years. Last Monday, of course, we invited Trustee Aiello, Vitas, Jaskoulis, and Rich Salerno to come and meet with the neighbors and discuss our street. Actually, I extend an invitation to all of you to actually come down our street and drive down, but don't drive too fast because you will bow down. I actually brought some photos to pass out so you can actually see the condition. And actually, one of my neighbors actually brought part of the street to show you guys.
Hey, Scott, they took something from you.
Yeah.
The only way you can get something done.
All right.
I don't know if you know, but last time my street
Oh,
was
look at
paved,
that. Oh, my.
last time my street was paved in the early 70s. We have numerous potholes, loose chunks of blacktop throughout the street, missing curbs. We have curbs that flipped over on its side and been removed and replaced with blacktop. Does not look very nice. Our street has sunk in many areas, and some places as much as 2 feet. The sewers are starting to cave in little by little. Our sewers, we have 3 main sewers. I guess our sewers are separated. They're all in the middle of the street. Our street comes on an angle going down. All the rainwater from both sides of the street accumulate in one spot. There's 3 homes that take on water every time we get a heavy rain. My house is one of them. The street is a hazard to drive on, to walk on. Our residents can't walk on sidewalks. We don't have sidewalks, so we actually have to walk on the street. The previous administration, knows about our street and the condition it is. And some years back, they gave us a rough road sign to see it. That tells you how bad our street is.
Come on.
Now, yes, we're the only street in Villa Park that actually has a rough road sign. And we're the only street in Villa Park that's actually sinking. And it needs to be addressed immediately. I mean, I'm hoping you guys can put on your upcoming agenda, but we need to get it done. I mean, it's devaluing our homes. And I thank you for listening, and please, come down our street, drive down, see how bad it is. I say if you go...
I was just on your street a week and a half ago.
If you drive down 25 miles an hour down that street, you will bottom out.
Yes.
I see it every day, and I live right there. Every day somebody bottoms out. And I said with the loose gravel and the blacktop, it's a safety hazard for everybody to walk on the street. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Lupo. Thank you for the artwork. Anyone else to speak?
Yeah, you brought it up, just so you know. I sympathize with you, but at least you got a rough road sign. But I know mine is rough. I know to drive down mine.
That's to tell you that we got a bad street when we get a rough road.
Right. For the last referendum, you tried to pass for the bond to fix all the streets. How many roads were in that condition other than theirs and mine and Kenilworth? You know,
we could probably get you all the information, Scott.
how many were? Because I mean, maybe that should come back up with more education and put it on like a March ballot, so it's not with the national election. So people that
Too late
don't
to get it
care,
on. It would be too late to get on the November ballot. It would be something the trustees would essentially want to talk about and possibly.
I mean, mine is, well, crossing my fingers, breaking ground in spring, but even after mine's done, like I said before, as long as I see progress getting done, they're patching the roads nice now,
A big key is going to be, I would imagine, come
I'll vote yes.
deciding to, the board working to decide whether they want to put a referendum up in March. And a lot of that will be based on public support.
March will be hard.
If you wouldn't mind seeing it, emailing all the trustees is probably not a bad way to start. Coming to a board meeting, doing what you're doing, saying you would support a road referendum. There are various ways, but the desire has to get put out there that the residents would support it. We've tried 2 already, and they've both failed. So the key would be to, realistically, the board can't say yes or no, please vote for it. What would be the best possible way would be similar to what District 88 did, which is run a referendum based on the public putting together their own effort, asking the board to put it up, and then the public taking a grassroots effort to get it out there and get it passed.
Okay.
I'm glad to see you're willing to take charge of that committee. If Scott
I haven't said that yet.
Scott Shepard lives on Michigan Avenue, he'd be more than happy.
Well, I understand what's left for ours to do design or something like that on our street? I mean, the engineering's done and everything, right? Or something like that. And about what did that cost? Rough numbers?
Well, total reconstruction will be close to 800,000.
Close to 800,000. And Michigan Avenue.
Oh, okay, you're on Michigan. I know all about Michigan.
Right.
Yeah, ours
famous.
is just one block.
Right.
Our Van Buren is 2 blocks long.
Right, like ours?
Gentlemen, you guys can, we've been here a long time, you guys can have that conversation right over there.
All I'm saying is,
over. I appreciate
that's a big
it.
chunk of money to do. There's the big chunk to do. Kenilworth would be a big chunk. If those are, the projects that come out of our street fund, my question to the, the residents, I guess, is, how much is going to be left for repaving in the other streets? If we don't pass a referendum, the streets will we can't play catch up. So.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll make this short and sweet. My name is Warner Muller. I'm at 42 East Van Buren Street. We do need a road between Ardmore and Cornell. That's the pavement that was put in there 43 years ago. Okay, as you can see, it's 1.25 inches thick. There's nothing left. There's nothing but patch after patch after patch. The rough road sign shouldn't even be there. It should be dangerous, not rough.
Right.
And I think I'm going to leave that here, a reminder, so everybody can see it, and possibly, something is going to be done by you people.
When Scott brought his bucket of street, he didn't take it home either.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I think this is a perfect example of what I wanted to talk to you about, is that, with this whole Garden Village, 2009, yeah, I went to those meetings. I talked about that. I figured it was dead. Everything over there was gone. The website's gone. And then all of a sudden, my mom happens to say, hey, they're having their, they're reading, and now it's all of a sudden apartments. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm trying to find stuff online. All the condo information is still on there. The apartment information, I can't find it. And that's something, I'm terrified to do any work in my house because I really don't know where do I have to go to figure out that I'm in compliance, because I'm a rule follower. I really don't want to do anything wrong. I've heard about our terrible road conditions for years. I don't know what I would do if I actually lived on one of those streets. We had Summerfest and Oktoberfest. Where were our opportunities for some of these people to get together and say, that is what I would have wanted to see. This is what our residents have to deal with, and it's not fair. Can we all come together? When Willowbrook does things for Relay for Life, when we came together to upgrade the high school and stuff, we did great things in a time where everyone else around us shot down, shot down, shot down. I think in Villa Park we have a difficult time making change when we don't feel people are always open and honest, and we truly don't understand what's really happening. And I think that's some of the concerns that, well, my roads aren't bad, because they don't ever drive over there. And there's a reason, because it's dangerous. So maybe there's some opportunities, in this, the apartment complex, 225 families was still on one of the websites. Has anyone talked to District 45 or District 88? We're crowded over there. Has anyone come and talked to the schools? When I try to contact the schools to say, what has the village told you about this new development, how it's going to impact the education of those students over there, I couldn't get an answer. And again, this was all last minute. I'm sorry. I know the answer's got to be somewhere. I just couldn't find it efficiently enough. But maybe on some of these opportunities with Summerfest, Oktoberfest, concerned citizens that have a passion, give us an opportunity, give us a free table, give us a free tent. And we can go ahead and say, this is why we need to pass this referendum on our roads. Look at what I have here. Here are my pictures. Let us help campaign. Let us help get some of these good things done for the village. Put us to use. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
One more. Sorry, it's John Whipple again. I want to thank you for bringing up our street again. She's not exactly right. There are people that actually do drive down our street. Every day about 3 o'clock when the high school gets out, they use our street as a way to just go flying down the street. And the way our street is, I've seen cars that actually get airborne on this street. So 3 o'clock, come down. Check out the high schools flying down our street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cliff Duple again. Thought I only had to speak once, but since number 8 that was on the agenda that was posted to the on the website, I don't think it was ever read of what number 8 was, and which states motion to approve employment terms. And you know, it wasn't too long ago that the an outside rating company went and rated villages on their transparency. And so now here we have 2 things on here that would have been a first and final, right? Because they were put there, but then taken off at the day of the meeting, or so. And I don't know if it's true or not, but 2 people tried to FOIA what this actually said, or what was the motion to approve employment terms, and they got nothing. So with this whole thing of transparency, I believe this is the reason why we failed in our village. These 2 things right here. First and final reading to go and put an ordinance for establishing a license and sanitation. Now, it was nice that you said that, oh, we're just getting up to code of the state. Well, sitting there when you have to go in and look at an agenda, you don't know.
Oh, I understand. That's frustrating.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then you look and say, motion to approve employment terms. Okay, what does that mean? Okay? You know, we've said it here twice so far, or you said it here twice, is can we put that up on the website? Well, why is there a question to that? Why is that? Why is it to where when there are agenda items, why isn't all of the information to that agenda item put up on the website? So that the people can actually go look at it and then stop the rumors. Okay? Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of rumors flying about number 8. Okay? So that's what's, you know, and it's not good on a positive or negative way. You know, it doesn't make for people having good community thoughts. So I honestly believe, I hope someone will ask here tonight, can all of the information on number 8, motion to approve employment terms, be put on the website? Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Any other comments on non-agenda items?
Mr. President?
You gotta go to the podium.
Do I have to walk up there?
Go ahead, Trustee Taglin.
I just would like to ask if my proposed transparency ordinance could be placed on the agenda for future consideration, sir. I filed it months ago. I'd like to see it move forward.
Why didn't you ask earlier?
I just imagined it would show up.
Hopes and dreams, right? Hopes and dreams. All right, with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President.
Trustee Davis.
It wasn't me.
Who was it? Trustee Aiello.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. President.
Trustee Taglia.
Second the motion to adjourn.
Questions or comments from the board on adjourning? Roll call, please.
Trustee Taglia?
Yes.
Trustee Bullwinkle?
Yes.
Trustee Davis?
No.
Trustee Aiello? Trustee Aiello?
Yes.
Trustee Bullfuss?
Yes.
President Cullerton?
Yes.
Don't
By the
tell
way,
me, John,
congratulations, Willowbrook. Another big victory, hopefully this week as well.
I'm telling you, I was telling you.